Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about the Netflix show Peaky Blinders. We're only going to be talking about the first two episodes of season one. But if you haven't seen those episodes, we will be going into spoiler territory. So now's a good time to go and check that out if you want before you see this, and then come back and see what we have to say about it. Without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right into this. So for Peaky Blinders, that was a request, actually. We had not heard of it on our own. And a while ago, I want to say actually sometime maybe as late as last year, someone in our chat like requested that we uh, watch this show because it's pretty good. So I think like right now, Peaky Blinders might be up to 3 seasons. I might be getting that wrong, but at the very least, we started watching it in season one and decided to talk about the first two episodes for the purposes of this discussion. And it stars Cillian Murphy, who we know very well from various Christopher Nolan properties, and is just all around a really cool and interesting actor. And it also has Sam Neill, which many of us will remember from the original Jurassic Park film, and I guess the newer one if you guys have seen that one recently. But yeah, like it's a period piece. Takes place in the UK in the 1900s, and it deals with like it's after the war, and well, I guess the war with France, right? It sounded like they were fighting in France, and then they came home, and it just kind of deals with like the fallout and these different like gang slash mob families and how they try to come to power. But like let me just go ahead and just ask you, Cheryl, like what were you kind of like feeling going into this? It starts off with, I remember you told me it starts off with like the Chinese like moment, which I thought was also very odd because that doesn't come back at all later. Like it only
Right.
exists for that one moment.
So I have a theory actually, but it was funny because I was at my mom's house this weekend, and so that's when I started watching it. And of course, it starts off with a bunch of Chinese people speaking real Cantonese. By the way, it's real Cantonese,
Nice.
and my mom's like, "Wait, what is that? I want to watch it." And she made me pause it literally because she wanted to, because she was off doing something, and she wanted to watch the show because she thought it was gonna be about Chinese people, or that like Chinese people would have like a lot to do with it. And I was like, Mom, I
I hate
really
to
don't
disappoint
think
you.
that it's gonna be that way. This is probably literally it. And so she was kind of disappointed. But my theory is that they might come back later because there had been mention of like the Chinese, and so I was thinking maybe the Chinese have their own kind of gang that will come back later, like maybe in another season or something, or maybe later on in this season. I don't know because we only watched 2 episodes. It's not really what they're focused on right now, but I feel like they wouldn't have brought it up unless they were going to bring it up again. If not,
Yeah.
they just did a really racist thing that bothers me.
Oh
Because
no.
fortune telling girls, no.
But was that historically something that happened?
I don't think so. I mean, the outfits looked right.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not entirely sure. Like, I think like you, there's a possibility that maybe it might come back because, like I said, we talk about this. This is how they opened the show, so it it makes you feel like it's going to be a part of it. Like if it wasn't important in some way, it feels like they could have just started with the girl just coming out and blowing the sand into the horse and then just go from there. We could have just started on Cillian Murphy, but we didn't. So I'm curious what that will like mean later on in the future, but it's always interesting to watch a new show with the expectation of trying to understand what the show is going to be about, right? Because we don't have any knowledge going in. We didn't watch any trailers or anything else like that. So when I was watching this first episode, it felt very much kind of like here's everybody, here's what you get to know them, these characters, this is what they're doing. But I didn't really feel like I got a real sense of what the show could be about within the first season until we got to the second episode.
See, I kind of figured out by end of the first episode, that's actually when it started to get interesting to me,
Hmm.
because that's when, like, you're right, they spent a lot of the first episode just putting all the pieces in, and they really didn't make any moves until the end of the first episode, where I think you find out that that the new bartender, she's a spy for the coppers, that the new guy that just came into town. Um, what else do you find out? I can't remember if you find stuff out in the first episode or the second episode.
Well,
Uh,
the one thing I remember is that at the end of the first episode is when he makes the decision to keep the guns, and that's a big deal because that's what they're
yeah.
looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I remember thinking to myself, well, if he does his plan and just gives the guns up, then there's no reason for Campbell to stay here. But at the end, Shelby makes the decision that he's going to keep the guns, and that is what's going to like lead. And I realized, okay, like when I was watching the second episode, I realized, okay, this whole thing about these guns is going to be the primary conflict that's in the background. Like I'm sure there's other things that are going to be happening, but in the background, it's all about we have to get these guns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's pretty much very um, mafia kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about gangs and the war between the gangs, and then you have this copper who I think is I know is probably gonna try to be a force of nature, but it already seems like he's not quite getting it. He might have to learn it quickly throughout the season, and I'm sure in the future he's gonna have a much more powerful role after he figures out how all the gangs work. But
Mm-hmm.
at this point in time, it seems like he doesn't really he has to figure it out, and it's also a little bit of a tool for us in the sense of we're learning how things work through him and the bartender as well. Like we're learning what the rules are, what the setups are, how that bar works, which is pretty much kind of their clubhouse or their headquarters, almost where they can just go, but they make the calls, and the owner of the bar just kind of rolls with it because he also benefits from the protection of the Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a really interesting dynamic, especially with the PTSD guy, to show that relationship, like they were in war together, and he is the kind of guy that will take care of his friends,
Yes.
but it also comes at a cost because you have to do you have to pay him back, you have to respect him, you have to play by his rules. So it's, yeah, I mean, typical mafia story, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. But it's something that I really liked was I kind of like the mafia stories where they're I mean and this happens a lot like we've seen it in like Italian type stuff as well, but like I like it when the characters are all about their community and giving back to their community. And the I forget the one lady, but kind of like who almost feels like the mom of the family, how she's
Polly.
Polly, yes, how Polly is like tells him when he because the whole point with the horse that we see at the beginning is that they're fixing a race, but they're fixing a race against the wishes of like the lead member of the family, and Tommy doesn't care. Tommy just does it anyway, and other people don't seem to really get it. So I like the fact that they also make Tommy smart, and Tommy does this whole thing where it's like, hey, look, if the horse wins twice, by the third time they're gonna bet more, and then that's when the horse loses, and when he that plan works like without a problem. There's no problem with it. It's carried out to perfection. But Polly tells him when he wins, she tells him right away, give that money back to the community because the community's got started getting policed and all this other stuff by Campbell when he was coming out because he was trying to like kind of I guess exert a strong show of force. And so the but when Paulie said that, Tommy's like, it's already done. Don't worry about it. So this is just standard operating procedure is to give the money back. So they didn't actually take the money just for their family, which I kind of liked. And even when that PTSD guy came in the first episode and he kind of broke things up and everything, immediately he says, Tommy says, "Hey, bill the cost of repairs to the Peaky Blinders." So they really are trying to do their best to make sure that even though they are a gang, they're trying to make it so that the people that are under them still feel a sense of protection or still feel like they are a part of a community. And it'll be interesting to see if that how like that relationship between like the protected and the protectors, like how that like looks on a deeper level. But within the first two episodes, it doesn't seem like anybody is all too upset with their setup.
Yeah, I mean, in I guess in a sense, when you have a position of power and wealth, if you want to keep that power and wealth, then you have to give back to the community. Otherwise, the community will just want you to get the heck out.
Right.
So it seems like the correct thing to do. That's what I would do if I was the mob boss.
Right? No, I mean, I like it a lot. And I think that it's like, and seeing how Tommy interacts with the other family members, that's another cool aspect of it so far, is that Tommy disagrees a lot with his older brother, but when push comes to shove, he's got his older brother's back. And I thought it was really interesting how we find out that they have razor blades in their hats. And I was thinking to myself, okay, so is that so that they can reach and grab it out of the hat if they need it? No, they actually just full on swing with the hat and cut you. And when I saw them, because in first episode they get into this fight with a couple of, I
The
want to say
Lees.
Irish people, but I might be misremembering. But I think it's a an Irish group that they're trying to do business with to like get a horse and stuff like that. But
That's
they get into a
The Lee group.
that's the what?
The Lee group.
The Lee group, yes, thank you. Yeah, and they get into a fight with them, and you see them like you see Tommy and his brother. They take off their hats and they start beating them with it. And you see the cuts and everything else like that, and it's like, oh, yeah, these guys are dirty. They're gangsters. They're fighters. Um, but I also like the other kind of elements of subtle storytelling that we're getting, where we're at least where we're learning more about Tommy as a character, because Tommy seems like somebody that's very much in control, but we learn right away that he has trouble sleeping, and we see him kind of doing drugs. Like I'm assuming it's opium, but it might be something else. But we see him doing drugs, and at least what I'm getting from it is not he's not doing drugs because he's addicted or he's an addict. I get the feeling he's doing drugs so that he can actually sleep. And the show is showing that he keeps having flashes back to the war, and so he wakes up in like cold sweat, so he has trouble sleeping. And in many ways, I think the character that had PTSD is kind of representative of what a lot of those characters that fought over in France are going through, including Tommy himself. And I think the show is doing a good job of showing that even though Tommy's PTSD isn't being acted on as much as the guy who ended up killing somebody in the middle of the street, he still has his own demons that he's suffering from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I was trying to pay attention to what were in those flashbacks of or that
Mm-hmm.
that he was dreaming of. It was really hard to see, but I could see um, members of the Peaky Blinders. So it almost feels like they started the gang
Mm-hmm.
after the war because of the war, that they could only really rely on each other. So I definitely think that's a cool dynamic. They don't have to put that there. They put it there for a reason. I'm assuming that it'll come up later. But I also kind of liked how he wouldn't shake the hand of Campbell, because he was
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't shake a hand for someone who didn't even
Fight for their country.
fight for the country. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
like, ooh, burn.
It's a good burn.
Yeah. He's
But no,
clever.
I do think the Peaky Blinders were around before that though, because Polly talks about how she was running things while the boys were away at war.
Right, right, and their parents as
Mm-hmm.
well. So, um, but yeah, I was gonna say one of the scenes that I really liked actually was between the bartender and Tommy
Yeah.
when they were just having a conversation. It was right after he had to kill the white horse, and up until like that point, I think I was feeling a little bored. I think because I'm not used to watching stuff with heavy dialogue. It's not. It's just a little harder for me to absorb things when they're spoken to me. Surprising,
Hmm.
because we're doing a talk show, but but it's true. It's harder for me to retain information when it's given to me verbally. So normally it's harder for me to watch these kind of shows, and I'll have to rewind it or watch it again to fully understand the full story that was being
Yeah.
written out. But then I started to really appreciate how the things were written, how the dialogue was written, and
Hmm.
how interesting they were able to make this conversation between this man and this woman. And they're literally talking about nothing of consequence, but they're using this conversation, this really well written dialogue, to show the bond and growth between them, that they're really starting to kind of get to know and understand each other to a degree. And I know that, part of her mission is to deceive him and get information from him. So she's doing her job, but he also doesn't realize it. And, you get kind of nervous because she almost got caught in a lie. But then she was able to just roll with it, and because of what he said, so the whole scene was just very clever and well written. And then I really started to appreciate the dialogue from all the previous scenes. Like, actually, a lot of what they have said so far seems pretty well thought out and constructed.
I like that scene too because you could see it's almost like if he didn't say anything, that would have been the end of her mission. But because he is somebody that believes he knows everything, because part of that dialogue serves two purposes in that moment. One, it's a purpose of making us fear for her because he's able to figure out that she's lying about her past. But two, it ties into his own doubts related to what was her name, Alba, or Ada, his I believe it's his sister,
His sister?
who who's like dating the communist guy because he doesn't want her to be with him and she doesn't want her to have to raise a kid by herself, which is what he believes, and that he believes that's going to ruin her life and stuff like that. And so he's kind of projecting his expectations and fears for how her life will go onto the bartender that he's talking to at the time, which is why he just says, "Oh yeah, so you had a kid or blah blah blah, and it ruined your life, and I'm right, and all this other stuff." But his own insecurities about what's going to happen to someone he cares about allows her to kind of skate by through her lie because he provides her cover story.
Exactly. And she just says, "Yeah, I don't want anyone to know about it." So
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I was like, "Yo, girl, good stuff." You hopped on that in a minute.
let the story continue.
So yeah, I like that scene a lot. And another scene I really liked, which is such a small scene, but when you see him walking with or he's riding the white horse through town, and the white horse gets scared, and then he tries to talk to the white horse to calm it down. Like, I remember seeing that moment and being like, "Oh, you're somebody that likes animals. Like, you really care about animals." And then later on, we find out in that conversation he never got used to seeing animals, specifically horses, die in war, but he got used to seeing men die in war. And so the whole reason he's there is because he had to put the horse down, and that like legitimately hurts him. So that's why he went there to drink and stuff. And I like seeing elements like that in our characters, especially this early in a show, because one of the things about doing a television show is that you have more time to allow these characters to develop. So that also means that sometimes you have episodes where you don't really get to see that much development because you can just kind of sprinkle it in over the course of like however many seasons you're going to have. But I like that so quickly we're getting to see the flaws or the weaknesses and the strengths of specifically our main character Tommy, and that makes him feel more well-rounded to me going into like these later episodes. And I already feel like I'm already starting to develop some type of like feelings about him, whether they be good or bad.
Yeah, and in a show like this where you really don't have too complex of a storyline. I know that there's a lot of people and a lot of different things going on, but if you think about it,
Pretty
each
simple.
person has their own motivation, their own storyline, their own trajectory, and it really, at the end, it's what's going to happen is they're all going to kind of cross over and affect each other and stuff like that. In that sense, it's very complex, but at the beginning, when you're just setting everything up, that's the time where you can really flesh out your characters. And then um, I think they, like you said, they did a really good job about doing that. But I do like how everyone has their own goals.
Yeah.
They're all very different goals, but everyone has their own different established goal, agenda that they're going to try to achieve. And I think that's the fun thing is because that's like the ultimate source of conflict when everyone has something that they want and then they start colliding. So I actually think it's really quite clever how this was written.
Yeah, the writing is like this one of the strongest things about it, and I'll be curious to see the bartender lady that we were talking about. They are implying that she has some type of deep trauma. Well, they don't imply it. She actually says that you know a group did something like the IRA, I think it was, were responsible for her parents' deaths, and that's why she was thinking that they were the ones with the guns, and that's why like Campbell was saying, "Hey, don't let that kind of like cloud your judgment." But she's like very much committed to this mission, and I'm wondering if her commitment to the mission is rooted deeper than just what was done to her family, and if because for the Peaky Blinders, they had nothing to do with that, right? They had nothing to do with whatever happened to her family, but she's still wanting to stay committed to this mission and seeing it through, regardless of who is actually responsible for taking these guns. I mean, and of course, they find out that he has the guns because he tells them, which, by the way, that's another really great scene because Campbell comes in like a force of nature. Like, we see him torture Tommy's brother and basically dictate rules for how things are gonna or how things are gonna happen. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, so this guy's gonna be like the problem for the Peaky Blinders going throughout the rest of the season. But by episode two, and this it's a great line. Tommy says, "You don't agree to a parlay when you're on the back foot." And so he's like, "I'm not gonna meet with this guy until we um, hit back." And he does it by in a very creative way, in my opinion, by burning the photos of the king, which he knows is going to like put pressure on Campbell. And so by the time he meets with Campbell, Campbell's already kind of like in his position of more desperation because of how Winston Churchill was talking to him. And so when Tommy's sitting there and telling him, "Hey, this is how this is gonna go down. You're gonna give me this, this, that, and the other, and you're gonna leave me alone with this, and blah blah blah. And then eventually, I'll give you your guns because if you don't follow what I'm gonna say, they're gonna end up in Ireland. All those people are gonna like, all your work there is gonna go to crap, and then you're gonna lose your job and never work again." And so I was just like, "Yo, this is brilliant," because he's not only attacking him personally, he's also attacking like the country and it's like and the progression, so it's like a bunch of other people are going to get hurt by the decision that you make. It's not just as simple as you losing your job. And so now Campbell is trapped, and which is why he was forced to send um, that girl in as another kind of backup plan to find out where these guns are hidden so that he could try to get out from under Tommy's thumb. But within 2 episodes, he's already under Tommy's thumb, even though he came in talking about how all these other police officers weren't worth anything because they took bribes. And I love that.
Right, but he's this close to being under her thumb, so see how
Yes.
that goes.
Right? And that's the dynamics, right? It's really interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say I do kind of feel like Tommy is his own worst enemy, and he's really like pushing it, and everyone's kind of like, "You're crazy for taking it this far. You're like stomping over what's his name, Billy Kemper or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The like fixing the horse races without his permission, and he comes in with a threat, but then somehow Tommy has this like really good offer, um, by saying like let's gang up on the Lees together. We could do it together, but not without each other and such. So I'm just like, man, this is gonna be the whole show. He's just gonna be getting into trouble and really finding a way to get out of it with his own wit. So that's not really my kind of show. Mobster movies, not really my kind of show. This was really interesting, but I don't think I'll keep watching it.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. It definitely has a style and something that is, if you're for it, you're gonna be really for it. But if you're not like so for it, then maybe it might, it might like you might want to jump off of it. But I think we both can agree that the show is very well done, and I also like that in the end, because like Tommy is also shown as like a character that is always strong, but in that scene that you're talking about, he still comes off as strong as smart, but he's still forced to bend the knee when he has to build and bend down and pick up the money. And the guy is like, it's a show of force or a show of power where the guy is like waiting to see what he's going to do. And you can see that Tommy doesn't want to bend down and take it, but he has to in this moment because it's not time to try and like take this guy down yet. So, yeah, I mean, I'm like you. I don't know. Like, I'm interested in this show. I'm more interested after the last episode, but I don't know when I'll get back to it. It's not necessarily something I felt like it was kind of when we talked about Pennyworth. Like, I feel like it had good things going for it, and definitely I think it's an interesting show. But there wasn't anything within the first couple episodes that made me feel like I have to go back and watch this right now and binge it and finish it in like a day or two. So I definitely think it's solid. It's probably one of those shows that also picks up like over time. So I could see myself like maybe watching it eventually, but as of right this moment, I don't think that I'll also like go back to it right away to finish it.
I do have to say that the music choice was interesting. Like sometimes it would feel like it fits correctly, and I don't notice it. But other times, including the theme song, I'm just like, what's with this rock music? It just kind of doesn't feel like it fits with the time period. So it didn't really bother me. It just kind of caught me off guard, and it doesn't really quite feel like it fits, but at the same time it works. I don't know how you feel about the music.
I had a similar, like, the music threw me off when I heard it, and I remember I had forgotten until you brought it up, but I remember in a specific moment I thought to myself, like, I don't know how I feel about this. And I remember thinking about like other shows that like had modern music in it, like in a period piece, like The Great Gatsby or Bridgerton, like came to my mind. And I remember I thought to myself, okay, well, I didn't get upset about how the modern day songs were used in those mediums, because one's a movie and one's a show. But I don't. I just remember like being a little taken aback by it in Peaky Blinders, but wanting to stay open because I've seen it done in other things as well. And so that's kind of where I landed on it, which is why I actually forgot about it, because I was like, it stood out to me, but not so much that I was just like, oh, I think this is terrible.
It feels okay, a little wrong, but not that wrong, yet acceptable. So I just roll with it. But it stands out to me in not the way that I think that
Was
they
supposed
intended
to.
it. Yeah. Other than that, like I do also I did write this down because I was a little annoyed that the one brown guy that was in it was Jamaican, and I feel like they only used him for a place marker to be like, this is where we are, and now we're back because we're seeing him again. So I was a little annoyed with that, and then we like never see him again. But other than that, just take a moment to read that in. They had really good production value.
Of course.
For
It's
a
really
period
good. It
piece.
looks great. Like all the like period pieces, man. I don't want to make one myself because they're like, I feel like those are expensive, but this, yeah, it looks good. It's filmed well. I think there's a couple of things that are green screen, but I think that overall, like everything blends pretty well. So, yeah, like the city and all that stuff, it's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think it looks good. I really felt like I was in the world until they started playing music.
Oh God! All right.
So that's all I have to say. I'm not, I overall I did enjoy it. I didn't initially enjoy it. Like you said, it's a lot like Pennywear. There's nothing really grabbing me too hard to be like, come back and watch it. I have to watch more. I don't think I would really tell anyone that they need to go and see this either.
Hmm.
But I
At least
did,
based on the first two episodes, like because
yeah,
things can change,
I
obviously.
did not like it. It's not on.
Right.
It wasn't that good.
Right. No, exactly. It's obviously good. It's got strong writing, strong production value, but just with the way that the first two episodes played out for you, it's like something that it's interesting, but not something that you feel like you have to go back and watch. So,
Pretty
yeah,
much.
that makes sense. And yeah, like I understand completely. But that's what we thought about it. That's what we thought about Peaky Blinders. So if you guys want to hear us talk about this and other things, you can check us out on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/sleep3films. It'd be great to see you over there. But what did you guys think about Peaky Blinders? Have you seen all the seasons? Are you up to date? Does the show kind of like pick up even more so than like it is in the first two episodes? What have you thought about it? Comment below. Let us know. And right down there, if you give us a like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we'll see you all next time.